All right, we took the week off because I don't think we have taken a week off probably since the beginning of the football season, correct?
Maybe once, but
I don't think so.
if that.
So it was a long overdue break needed, even if it was just literally 1 week. We were taking off for anticipation of the Aaron Rodgers signing. It turns out he's just never going to sign, so it's whatever. We're just going to move on from that. It doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things anyway. We have a larger episode, I think. I don't know how, it depends how quick we go through some of this stuff, but let's get into it. The first thing that I wanted to start with, and you can obviously get your notes, whatever you have out ready for this, but the Bengals' questionable approach to team building that has now been very public, and everybody kind of has the same opinion of it, is like they're cooked. The longest awaited contracts that needed to be done was the Jamar Chase, which he got 4 years, 161 million, and T Higgins, who got 4 years, 115 million, which now means the Bengals will be spending 44% of their cap on three players, $125 million per year: Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T Higgins.
That's insane. I mean, great. You get to keep those three guys around for the next handful of years, but not the best way to build out a roster, especially when your defense was one of the worst in the NFL last season. They gave up 30 passing touchdowns on defense, which was fourth worst, and 20 rushing touchdowns on defense, which was seventh worst. So, like, they just basically put themselves in handcuffs as far as realistically improving that side of the football. They have not been drafting well, and they were really banking on some of these recent draft picks on the defensive side of the ball to hit, and they haven't.
Yeah, they haven't. Great way to put it. This does solve one of their problems, though. Joe Burrow is happy, quote unquote. But it feels like, and this might rub Bengals fans the wrong way, but it feels like the Joey B tenure has been a bit overrated, in my opinion. But it's not his fault, because he obviously is an exceptional quarterback. He goes out every year and balls. 2020 rookie season, 4-11. Joe Burrow knee injury. He played 10 games. 2021 bounce back season, 10-7. They went on a tear through the playoffs that season, from the wild card, and lost in the Super Bowl to the Rams. 2022 12-4, first in the division, lost in the conference championship to the Chiefs. 2023 9-8, Joey B wrist injury. He played 10 games, missed the playoffs. 2024 9-8, Joe Burrow, great season, and ultimately missed the playoffs. We've talked about this a few times. Is the Bengals start out every single season 0-2, 1-3, and always put themselves behind the 8 ball at the very beginning of the season. And it just feels like this move and how they're constructed as of right now, who their head coach is, I don't see that problem getting solved. I know that they heat up towards the end of the season. They went on a tear at the end of the year and won the games that they needed to win. But ultimately, if they didn't start out so poorly, they would have been a shoo-in for the playoffs this year.
Yeah, but it also doesn't help. And when your starting quarterback is injured for X amount of games,
yeah, he's
pretty
missed
much
20. Yeah, he's
every
missed
other
a
season.
lot of games in his career already in his 5-year career as of right now.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any doubt that either one of us think that he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. But
100%.
when he plays, but you got to be out there, and when he's not out there, this team is just, which understandably so, like, this team is just not even remotely close to being like, nobody should take this team seriously with Joe Burrow not being out there. And, like, yeah, that's obvious. What team is really going to be that good without their starting quarterback? But, like, they have so much money invested into 3 guys that they're not able to improve around the edges anywhere else on this team. And, like, you can't necessarily survive when you start out slow like that. And that's just not how you want to start every season, year in and year out. And now Joe Burrow's healthy. He's got his two guys, but like this defense is really bad.
Mhm.
And I know that they made an effort in free agency to bring in some guys, but like it's a lot of 1 and 2 year deals, like a lot of let's take a shot on this type of player, but I, I don't know. I don't love the amount of money that they're putting on into three guys.
Oh no, I mean how could you at this point? But one thing I said this. I said the Joe Burrow tenure has been a bit overrated. It's
Yeah,
not because
yeah,
of him, and the reason I'm saying that is just strictly on the front office and most importantly ownership. And there's a lot of people who have covered this over the years where the Bengals organization isn't a cash rich organization. So they look to backload a lot of their contracts, which puts their cap situation in the worst possible situation that you could have. As in other situations like the Eagles, they will pay a lot of the money up front in like a signing bonus, for example.
yeah,
So them backloading these contracts puts them at a disadvantage, and that's just because of what they are as an organization. They are not like a cash rich organization. If they acted early, and I saw this tweet, they would have had Jesse Bates for $12 million a year, a guy that they've been missing ever since he's walked out the door. T. Higgins for $23 million a year, Jamar Chase for $35 million a year, and Trey Hendrickson for $25 million a year, which that's another thing looming right now is he obviously asked for a trade and he wants to get paid. Um, it just feels like time and time again that the only people to be mad at in this situation is I think the head coach and I think the ownership and the front office because they have gotten dumb luck almost in a way to they obviously nailed the T. Higgins pick at the top of the second round. You have Jamar Chase practically fall into your lap, and then you have Joe Burrow practically fall into your lap, and those guys are just generational talents.
yeah, yeah. And the year that they won or that they made it to the Super Bowl and the year that they made it to the AFC Championship and lost, those were seasons where they actually hit on some of those draft picks and those younger guys were playing well, and then everybody left the building, right? Because nobody in the Bengals front office wanted to open the checkbook for any of those guys. And yeah, that's not Joe Burrow's fault at all. But this is kind of Joe Burrow's fault now. And if they
Yeah.
don't get it done with Joe Burrow going on his press tour complaining about how he wants these two guys around,
And
rightfully
Gesicki.
so, and Mike Gesicki, and like I get it. I would want weapons too if I'm Joe Burrow, right? But like you got to be able to build the rest of your team up. And if they don't get it done now, after he went out there and made all these comments about opening the checkbooks and signing these guys, like it's going to be on him too, because he was the one that went out there and was talking about all of this. And
This
they
is
finally opened up the checkbook, and here we are.
yeah, and if you just look at the list of players that have walked out of the building over the years, like even Joe Mixon played at a high level last year. He walked out of the building. Logan Wilson has Joe Mixon. Logan Wilson has retired. Jesse Bates, DJ Reader has walked out the door. There's just
Yeah.
guys that were game changers for them during their two deep runs in the playoffs that have walked out of the building. And like you said, they've tried to do draft guys in replacement of those guys that they are preparing for them to walk out of the building, but they just haven't hit on any of them.
No, they haven't. And they really need to do an impressive job this draft to they have to improve the secondary. Giving up what did I say here?
There's
30
multiple
passing touchdowns.
there's
Fourth worst in the NFL.
there's multiple and let me know what you think about this. I feel like this team has multiple issues. Like it's not just the secondary. I don't think that they have an edge rusher. If Trey Hendrickson walks out of the door, and I don't think anybody in the world would think that he's elite. He does have good seasons, but he walks out of the door, you don't have an edge rusher. I think that their D line's weak. I don't know anybody in their linebacking core. Their secondary is weak. And something that has always come up time and time again is this offensive line, which they have brought in journeymen, like big journeymen, to try to like fill in those tackle spots and fill in around the gaps, but they have just flat not worked. So I think that, and even I know Chase Brown was like a cute story last year and he's decent, but I think that if you were to ask them, like, would you like to upgrade the running back position? I think that the answer would probably be yes. So I think they have the quarterback and wide receivers down, like, good for them. But quite literally every single other position on the field for them is a spot that they are probably looking to improve heavily.
So the reason I specifically pointed out secondary was because the guys that they did resign or sign in free agency were a lot of defensive linemen.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Joseph Asai, Cam Sample, BJ Hill, TJ Slayton, 4 defensive linemen that they signed or re-signed in free agency. So like that's why I mentioned the secondary. But you're right either way. I think all levels of this defense need improvements, especially if you lose your number one edge rusher. And they're in a tough spot now because what are they going to do? Are they going to sit there and pay him? Because I think he's been very good. I agree. I don't think he's been necessarily elite, but I think he's been a very, very good pass rusher. And for them to wrap another, what, 15-20% of their salary cap in
just doesn't make much sense.
it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So
he's also not, I know that like he might be like there's a reason why the Bengals can't move him. The Bengals are asking for like a first round pick, and every team in the NFL are like, let's get real. Like
yeah,
Trey Hendrickson is a like chubby white dude that wears tight long sleeves and no gloves. Like he's not aesthetically pleasing. If he looked like Myles Garrett, then sure, like ask for whatever you want, but he just doesn't look the part, no matter how productive he is.
he has been elite the last 2 years. 17 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons. That's impressive.
I know he has, but I'm just saying, like the eye test wise, like if you're looking at him, like you're like, okay, like this guy is not our cornerstone edge rusher. Which the Bengals have to feel that way too, because they're hesitant to give him a massive contract.
Which is crazy. Maybe not necessarily crazy because he's 30, but he's put up 2 phenomenal seasons. He has another season.
Myles Garrett was the highest paid non-quarterback for 15 minutes, but
no, I know, but Myles Garrett's also
30.
The third best player in the NFL.
How many sacks did Myles Garrett have last year?
But he does it he puts up that number every year.
But that's exactly what I'm getting at.
I know. I'm not saying you're wrong.
If he looked like Max Crosby, he's getting the bag.
Yeah, if he was sober, he would be.
If he looked like Max Crosby, he would be getting the bag. But he doesn't. So
yeah,
that's just something that we need to take into account. He doesn't pass the eye test.
But yeah, they can't wrap up another 15-20% of their cap in.
I would hope not.
Trey Hendrickson. And if they do, like, great, they'll keep 4 really good players, but that makes your margin for error everywhere else so much smaller.
Correct. And I do want to say that I want to wrap this up by saying everyone is so against this that I almost feel like I'm going to zag the other way and say it's going to work.
Well, they're going to have 12,000 yards of offense.
Every single person that is like on Twitter saying like, oh, like they're screwed, they're cooked, like blah, blah, blah. I don't hate these contracts. You sign these guys onto contracts for 4 years. You have Joe Burrow locked up long term. They might struggle this year, but let's just hypothetically say they land a great draft class and the cap continues to spike. They're going to look like geniuses, but it really comes down to let's get this draft right.
They have to. There's so much riding on this draft.
But I do think I like the direction that they're going to go. It's just wonky at first, but if the cap continues to grow, which it seems like there's no reason why the cap won't keep going up every single year, these would be team-friendly deals at this point. I also heard someone kind of allude to the fact of like there are going to be players that will come. Like somebody said, Nico Collins at $24 million a year, like looks like a bargain. I think TJ Watt said this, and then I forget what I was listening to, but they alluded to the fact of like what's stopping Nico Collins being like, I want a restructured deal to make more money now that the cap is at X amount. There's going to be a point where you are going to have to keep the guys that you have in-house just as happy as well. And I know that isn't how things have been done in the past, but these NFL contracts have been getting more contentious. Guys have been way more outspoken, and I think that could definitely be something that could be something to monitor over the next few years where, for example, like Patrick Mahomes is like underpaid at this point, like compared to the rest of the market.
Yeah.
And like, at what point is he going to be like, yeah, like it's time for me to restructure this 10-year deal so I'm the highest paid player in the NFL? Like, probably pretty soon.
Which is crazy because the Chiefs just have spent their money so poorly.
Yeah.
And just handcuffing themselves into another, which is it really handcuffing yourself if you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback? No.
Probably not.
But just haven't been smart with who they've brought onto their team.
But that's just something that I want
to
monitor over time, where like that could be a possibility. Like there might, in 2 years, T. Higgins might have 2 years. I mean, Jamar Chase might have 2 years left on his contract. And if Malik Neighbors is the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL and he hasn't done half of what Jamar Chase has done, Jamar Chase is going to be like, yeah, we need to rework this deal because I'm the best player in the NFL. And I think that is just going to be the continued reality of that.
Yeah, that's like it's going to be like the NBA version of I want a trade. But it'll be with contracts for the NFL.
Yeah, it's because it seems like everybody's been able to keep their guys. None of the big names that we talked about during this offseason have really moved. It's all been figured out contractually, which it seems like that's the only thing that matters. It seems like guys want to stay with their teams. It feels like that's a common theme in the NFL. People don't really team hop. If they go somewhere, they stay there for a really long time. I mean, even Stephon Diggs, for example, like he played for 2 teams his entire career, but he was on the Bills for a while. He was on the Vikings for a while, but it just feels like guys aren't like as willing to team hop. They just want that money.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I respect, like the whole contract thing rather than trade me. Because I like seeing these guys stay on these teams. Like, yeah, it's cool. Like in the off season, whatever, like trades, new signings, whatever. But like at the end of the day, like watching T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow on the offensive side of the football is really fun as a fan.
For sure.
It's such a dynamic offense when those 3 are out there. It's really great. T. Higgins basically won me a fantasy championship, so I'm forever indebted to him.
Yeah, I love T. Higgins. I love T. Higgins. I think he's extremely underrated. So I'm right with you.
Things changed for me in fantasy football now in a potential keeper league because I have T. Higgins and I was seriously not going to keep him, but after this deal, I have to consider him.
Yeah, I'm not even talking. That's the fakest keeper league of all time. I don't even want to hear about that. Noah is in like the most like candy shop fucking fantasy league I've ever in my entire life.
Listen, I'm just the messenger. I'm not the commissioner.
Okay. Well, hey, I'm just saying.
White clouds blowing out when we